you know, when Billboard finally started doing a modern rock radio chart, which I think was 89, off the top of my head, I'd have to look it up. But the very first number one song at the format was Peekaboo by Susie and the Banshees.
Yeah.
Now, to see that the format has gone from starting with that to wherever the hell it is now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, things have changed considerably, and there was so much music that got on the air because programmers were really passionate about it, and over time, that began to have nothing to do with what was on the air.
Right. It seemed like it was trying to disrupt or be subversive to what was on the air on other stations. Like I said, the classic rock and the pop stations. It just showed that there was an alternative. And that's, I guess, maybe where the alternative label came in, which doesn't really mean much these days.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything anymore. But no, I mean, I would say that the overall attitude, you know, in regards to programming was being subversive. And yet, you know, it's kind of funny to look back on that now because you see a lot of the things that were heavily embraced by the station that are kind of very AAA oriented artists now. I mean, some 97X was huge on like the Bodines and Big Head Todd and the Monsters and some acts like that.
Even where Wilco was even going now.
Sure. There was stuff that now, you know, you would be like, oh, like that isn't, you know, alternative or
I mean,
whatever.
honestly, I think I probably heard the Gin Blossoms for the first time on 97X, and they became very pop and very mainstream.
There were a lot of things like the Gin Blossoms that got played, and you mentioned Bare Naked Ladies earlier. There were artists that were played on the station a year or more before they saw wide mainstream success. And generally at that time, the station would back away from it.
The station has had a couple of sort of heartbreaking closures, but always like sort of 9 lives. It's gone through all 9 of them apparently. Maybe you could talk about like the first time that WOXY got unplugged.
Well, I mean, definitely in 2004 was when Doug and Linda sold the FM station. And it was a very sad and emotional experience.
I remember that.
But it was something that, even though we were all shocked because we had no idea that it was happening, and apparently they had been working on it for a while. But for all of us, I think we ultimately understood it. I mean, we were disappointed, and it was, you know, I mean, it was devastating to some people. But Doug was in his early 60s. Linda was a couple years younger than him. They had been involved in the day-to-day operation of the station. They were in the offices every single day, working on stuff, hands-on, and I think it had taken its toll. I think, you know, running an independent FM radio station in the heels of all of the, you know, just the clear channelization of the world, it had become very difficult. And I think we all knew the station was struggling financially, even though they were very guarded and private about that sort of thing, and we didn't really know what was going on. But, you know, you knew there were less commercials on the air than there had been. You knew that it was mostly the local accounts and not all of the national accounts. And there had been signals, you know. So the station, you know, signed off in May of 2004. And there had been a lot of work put into relaunching as an internet-only station immediately after that. But the plans that they had made, the deals that they had been working on had fallen through. And so when we signed off for the last time, you know, when the FM station signed off the air that May, it seemed as though everything was over. And then it took about a week, I guess, when some angel investors appeared, and they took the plan that had kind of been worked on by Doug and Linda to take, you know, basically 4 of us and keep like a core staff of people and continue on a much smaller scale online. and they made that happen. Now it took like 2.5, 3 months, I guess, to actually come back online, but it all got put in motion pretty quickly. So we went through that era from 2004 to 2006, and the angel investors decided that they couldn't put in any more money, and so we started to go off the air again, and that was when we got bought by a company at the time was a total upstart called Lala.com.
That Apple just pulled the plug on like a week or so ago, finally, once and for all. Yeah, Apple eventually purchased them.
Apple purchased Lala. And that's, the ultimate irony, of course, where we are right now, is that even if Future Sounds would have never come along,
if you stayed with Lala.
If we had stayed with Lala, I would guess that we would pretty much be in the exact same situation right now, because Apple would not have funded the station.
No.
But so Lala ran us then for about 2.5 years, I guess, and we ended up with, ironically, what we thought was an amazing situation. We got purchased by this upstart company called Future Sounds, and they said all the right things. We were romanced, and it all seemed really terrific. They made those plans to move us to Austin, and I think especially for those of us who made that move, it just sort of seemed like we were really on the beginning of the next really exciting chapter in the station's history. To have people behind us who not only totally got what we did, but who were willing to make such a big investment and move us to a location that was just going to be like, Music Row.
Right, just a fresh start.
There's so much stuff,
potential.
so much potential in Austin. And unbeknownst to us, there was, a lot of, financial difficulties going on in the background that we had no idea what was happening. And so yeah, after we worked an insanely busy week with South by Southwest, hosted over 20 bands, did performances from Surfer Blood and Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, and just so many bands that we were super excited about. We came into work the following Monday and got the phone call that just said, guys, we're not going to be able to do this anymore.
Yeah, and that was just heartbreaking, because I felt the same way that you did, that this is a fresh start and they must really have a strategy in place, and they wouldn't be investing this kind of time in them if this wasn't going to be a longer term thing. Right. And then, just to have that happen right after South by Southwest was just almost like, are you kidding me? Like, is this a joke? And obviously, sadly, it was not a joke.
It was pretty crushing. We had been given the heads up, I guess, about 2 weeks prior that there were difficulties, but at the same time, we also were always kind of given this, well, here's what we're working on, and this is what we're doing, and we in fact met people. I don't even know what I'm allowed to say or not say at this point, but I'll just say that we met people during the week of South by that we were basically told we're going to be the new investors or new money people behind the station. So when I left on that Saturday at the end of the week, my assumption was that everything was fine. It seemed like we came really close to a disaster, sort of very, very surprisingly, but that it was all worked out. That was how I left South by.
Mm-hmm. And then, unfortunately, whatever those deals were, they just never transpired.
Whatever they were, between earlier in the week when we shook hands with those people, and then by Monday morning, whatever it was didn't happen. And then it was just like a flurry of insanity.
And as far as we know, Future Sounds continues to try to position the station.
Yes.
Okay. But just obviously nothing has happened yet, and it's been like 10 weeks.
It's been 10 weeks, and I can't really speak to any of that stuff. There were deals in motion even after that didn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
and we all started to disconnect from it a few weeks later. I mean, it became clear that whatever was going to happen or not happen was not necessarily dependent on us, and so we all kind of started to unplug.